Hello, my name is Adam Goes. I'm a geotechnical engineer with the Risk Management Center in Louisville, Kentucky. The purpose of this video is to provide an overview of the RMC event tree toolbox. The purpose of the toolbox is to generate a standard format event tree based on user-specified input. So when you open the toolbox, you're faced with the About tab, which gives you the version history and general overview of the toolbox. The Terms and Conditions tab provides general terms and conditions that are included in all of our RMC toolboxes. The version history provides the current version number and any revision notes from past versions. And the References tab is blank for this toolbox as there are no references for the event tree toolbox. The next tab is the Event Tree Input tab. This is the tab that we will spend the most time in. This is where all of our information for our event tree will be input. And finally, the Event Tree tab provides the event tree output based on our event tree input that we can use to copy and paste into a report or a presentation. I want to quickly go over a couple of limitations for this toolbox before we get started. First, the toolbox constructs an event tree that is a single linear progression to breach without multiple failure nodes. That means that if any of your nodes have multiple branches other than yes or no, then that event tree will need to be created outside of this toolbox. This may be a functionality that we add in later, but for now, it's not part of the tool. The second limitation is the intent. The intent of this toolbox is to copy and paste the event tree as an image into a report or a presentation, not to print an editable event tree from the worksheet into another application such as Microsoft Word or PowerPoint. So with that, we'll get started into the method for using the toolbox. In the event tree input, there's two steps that we need to follow to form our event tree. Step 1 is characterize the event tree, and step 2 is defining our node-specific information. So starting in step 1, we need to characterize our event tree. There's 4 user options for characterization of the event tree that we need to consider. The first is our initiating event. A drop-down list is present that allows the selection of flood loading, seismic hazard, or other as the initiating event. Flood loading and seismic hazard are the two most common initiating events for potential failure modes and event trees, but other is in place that allows a user to specify another initiating event should that be present. The next option is to select the number of event tree nodes that are present in our event tree. This can be any number between 1 and 9. 9 is the maximum number of nodes that the toolbox will allow, and you select with however many nodes are present in your event tree. The final two options include options to turn node titles on and off, or whether or not you want to include nodal callouts in your event tree. These are drop-down menus that allow you to select yes or no. When you go to the Event Tree tab, you can see the options of all of the event tree characterizations in step 1 in the event tree input are accounted for. Let's say, for instance, instead of a flood loading, you have a seismic hazard as your initiating event. You come over and you select seismic hazard, go back to the event tree, and we can see that flood loading has been replaced with seismic hazard and coincidence stage. The same thing will happen if we select a different number of nodes for our event tree. Let's say that we select 6 nodes. Now there are only 6 nodes in the event tree, so the number of nodes is pruned automatically based on the selection in the previous tab. If we don't want to have nodal callouts or node titles and we select no, those will also disappear automatically. It's important to note that on the event tree input tab, step 2 contains conditional formatting that will gray out areas that don't require user input based on the selections in step 1. If there are no titles, then all of the title boxes will be grayed out. If there are no callouts, the callout boxes will be grayed out. And the rest of the cells will be grayed out based on the number of event tree nodes that are selected. So if there are 3 event tree nodes, each node after node 3 will be grayed out, indicating that no user input is required. So now that we've gone over the functionalities, the basic functionalities of the toolbox, let's go through a quick example to show how it works. So I'm going to copy and paste in an image of an embankment overtopping failure mode event tree that we are going to recreate within the toolbox. So the first thing that we need to do is characterize our event tree. We see that our initiating event is a flood loading. So we need to select flood loading as our initiating event in the tool. There are 5 nodes in this event tree. So we come over and we select 5 nodes. We see that there are nodal titles, but there are not any nodal callouts for this event tree. So for nodal titles, we will select yes, and for nodal callouts, we will select no. So next, all that's left for us to do is to fill out the information in step 2 for our node-specific, event tree-specific information. So the node 1 title is unsuccessful intervention. And the description is intervention to prevent overtopping is unsuccessful. After we've entered this information, we can go to the event tree tab and we can see that the information for our node title and description for node 1 has been automatically populated. This will happen for each node as we fill out the event tree. So let's continue this process and enter node 2, which is slope protection failure. So we can see when we entered in this text, the cell turned orange. This is because there is a recommended maximum character count for the event description and the callout boxes based on the amount of space that's available within the event tree to show that text. The recommended maximum character count is denoted in the margins in these notes. For the event description, it's 75 characters, and for the callouts, it's 375 characters. The note will also display the amount of characters that are currently present in the cell. So in this cell, we have 83 characters, which exceeds the 75 recommended max. And so a conditional formatting is used to turn the cell orange. It's important to note that this is not a stop sign, but it's more of a warning. It's more for your benefit so that you can make sure when you look at your event tree that everything is showing up correctly, because you're starting to get close to a number of characters where you can't fit them all in the space allotted. So we'll continue along, go to node 3, head cut initiation. Node 4 is continuation. And now we can see that that node is orange as well, so we'll need to make a note to check that description. And finally, node 5 is breach. And once more, we see that we've exceeded the maximum recommended character count, so we'll need to check that node as well. But after we've entered all of our information for nodes 1 through 5, we're complete in the event tree input tab, and we go to the event tree tab to make sure that everything shows up correctly. So remember that nodes 2, 4, and 5 gave us warnings that we were exceeding our maximum recommended character amount. Well, for nodes 2 and 4, it looks like everything is showing correctly. The entire description is present and nothing is being cut off, so that's good. For node 5, we can see that the description is being cut off and it's not showing completely. So there's two options of ways that we can fix that. The first is we can go back to our input tab and we can figure out a way to reduce the amount of text in the description so that we're underneath or close to the recommended maximum character count. The other way is to use the customization features within the toolbox to resize these text boxes to see if we can make everything fit in a way where it's all going to show up. So what we can do is we can make this text box just a little bit bigger. And just like that, it looks like the entire description is now showing up and looks good. So we don't have to reduce the amount of text. We can just edit those text boxes to make them a little larger. The same thing can be done with our node title text boxes. Unsuccessful, we see intervention is being cut off. So we can resize that as necessary to make sure that everything fits. So now that we've entered all of our information into the toolbox, the next thing that we do is copy and paste this event tree into a report or a presentation. So to do that, what we need to do is highlight the cells surrounding the event tree, making sure that we are capturing all of the objects within that event tree. So we want to capture all of the text boxes, all of the objects within the event tree itself, the arrows, the flood loading, all of that. And then once we have that all selected, right-click and hit copy. And then we come over to, in this case, PowerPoint, and we want to paste as an enhanced meta file. We do an enhanced meta file because it keeps the integrity of the figure such that it can still be legible and it maintains the quality of the figure the best way. So what we can do is we can bring up the paste special box, and we can paste as an enhanced meta file. There's two ways that we can do that. The first is we can hit Control-Alt-V on our keyboard, which brings up the paste special box. We can select Picture Enhanced Meta File and click OK. Or the other way is we can come up to the Paste button, hit the down arrow, select Paste Special, and from there, click Picture Enhanced Meta File and OK. So that will bring our event tree into the presentation as an enhanced meta file. You can see that all the text is clear, everything is showing up correctly, and now we have the option to resize our event tree as necessary to make sure that it fits on the screen and that everything is legible. So that's the basic functionality of the event tree toolbox. There is one more thing that I would like to demonstrate, and that is how we would use nodal callouts. So let's come back to the event tree input tab. And now let's say we are after the risk assessment and we want to add nodal callouts to provide justification for how we elicited our nodes, how we elicited probabilities for our nodes. We provide supporting information to help support our elicitation and display that clearly on the event tree. So what we would do is toggle include callouts, nodal callouts, make that yes. And now we have the option to put nodal callouts in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste in some nodal callouts that I have previously put together, and we can see how those look in the event tree. Okay, so there's our 5 nodal callouts. So now we go back to our event tree tab, and we can see that the nodal callout boxes have appeared, but they're not showing the entire text that we entered into the input tab. So what we need to do is we need to resize and move these nodal callout boxes as necessary to make sure that they show up correctly. So we can do that for node 1, for node 2, and this is up to the user to figure out what's the best configuration and best size of these text boxes that makes the most sense and is the most visually appealing. So we're going to go ahead and move the box for node 3, resize and move the box for node 5. So this requires some iteration on your part to figure out what configuration of these boxes makes the most sense. I'm going to move that down. And now for node 5, I'll move that down. Node 1, bring it up this way a little bit. So now we can see that the boxes are all showing up. They're showing all the information that we want to, except for this one. So I'll make that one a little bit bigger. And now it's up to us to fix these arrows and make sure that nothing is overlapping. So you can see on nodes 2, 3, and 5, the arrows are terminating right above the nodal titles. So that looks fine. But for nodes 1 and 4, we're sticking up into the node description text, which we don't want. So all we have to do is edit these arrows, move the termination points down, and make sure that they're in the appropriate location. One other thing that we can do, if you want your node arrow to be a straight line, you would right-click the arrow, move up to connector types, and click straight connector. This will make the arrow a straight line so that you can point straight down at the nodal callout instead of having an elbow connector. And if you want to change it back, all you would have to do is repeat the process. Right-click the arrow, go to connector types, and hit connector elbow. So once you've finished moving all of your text boxes around and you're happy with the way that the event tree and the nodal callouts look, you would follow the same process to copy and paste. You would select all of the information. It looks like I missed a box over here, so I would want to expand that selection by another cell or two. Copy and then paste as an enhanced meta file into a presentation or a report. One other thing to note is these text boxes don't have to stay above or below the event tree. You can also move them. You can move them anywhere you want to on screen, any configuration that makes the most sense for your particular event tree for your project.